So I apologise if I look like a sweaty mess. Summer has actually just arrived in the UK. It's very, very warm in this room, and I would put my fan on, but you guys would definitely hear that if I was recording, and it would overpower my voice. So I apologise. Yeah, this is probably what the videos are going to look like because it is now summer. And last night I went to see Thunderbolts, which is Marvel's, the MCU's new film. Marvel's Thunderbolts follows a group of criminals who are the unlikely heroes as they are forced to team up to solve a new mission. Again, very vague. A lot of what I want to talk about in terms of what the mission is and stuff like that is actually going to be spoilers. I am going to do a little spoiler section at the end of the video, so yeah, you'll get a warning for that. But a lot of that kind of thing I think would be better talked about in spoilers. But this is one that's interesting for me because by this point I'm not really invested much in the MCU anymore. I think the last thing I properly, the last film I watched where I was still invested and following everything, I think was Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think I mentioned that when I reviewed Captain America: A Brave New World, where I said, you know, I'm kind of coming into this not really knowing much about the MCU anymore or where it's going. I can kind of have an idea of where I think it's going, but again, I'll talk about that in spoilers. But yeah, in terms of all of this, like for example, I don't remember where some of the characters came from in this. We got Yelena and Red Guardian from Black Widow, which I did watch, but that was 2020. I don't really remember it, to be honest. And then we've got the previous Captain America from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, John Walker, who I do remember what his story was. Bucky Barnes is obviously in this. And then we've got Ava, I think is her name, who I think is from Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I don't remember. I remember not particularly enjoying it, but again, I don't remember. So I'm kind of coming into this once again in a weird sort of state, in a weird position where, yeah, I'm essentially coming into this on a clean slate. Like, I know a couple of the characters, all can recognise some of them, and that's kind of it. So in that, my overall roundabout way of asking, of getting to my point is, would you still enjoy this if you don't know anything about MCU? I think so. I actually think so. And I think what's interesting with the new round of MCU films is you can kind of come into this sort of new in a way. There are a couple things that are mentioned in this that are from like previous films, but there are a lot of things that they talk about where it's like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but it doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things. So I think it's okay to kind of come into this one not really knowing any of the characters. And the, well, so-called villain is a new character, so you don't really need to know anything about them. And I really enjoyed this. I thought this was a lot of fun. I think even from the trailer, I thought this was going to be quite fun. The cast are great. They work really well together. I especially liked David Harbour as the Red Guardian. He is... he's essentially playing an embarrassing dad. And again, I don't remember Yelena and Red Guardian's relationship in Black Widow, but that is touched upon in here, which I liked. I liked their emotional connection. It is essentially more Yelena's story more than anyone else's, really. We start with her right from the opening scene and we end with her, essentially. So it is kind of her story and her focus. She feels lost. She needs to find a purpose, or feels like she needs to find a purpose in her life. But all of these other characters are kind of the same. John Walker, after being Captain America and then not being Captain America through to his actions, he's also lost. Bucky Barnes is now running for Congress, well, was, and that's gone downhill, so he's lost. Ava is also feeling lost, and I apologise, I don't remember how her story ended in her previous film, so I apologise for that. But they all feel like they need to find a purpose in their life, and yeah, they feel lost, they don't know what they're doing with their life, and feel like they need to find something to hold on to. And I liked that. That's how they all connected. That's how they all related to each other. Even if it started off not so great. The scene where they first meet each other is fantastic. It's a whole ball of confusion, but it's incredible. I had a really fun time with that whole sequence as well. But yeah, in the end, the emotional connection and them realising this is what connects them together, and they worked really, really well. This is sort of just a small thing to bring up, but I have put in my notes, Bucky and John Walker haven't met since Falcon and Winter Soldier. So that was also interesting as well. I have mentioned it because it's also in the trailer as well, in the promotional materials. But yeah, I feel like they could have touched on that a bit more, because that's really interesting. They literally have not met each other or seen each other since then. And I feel like there should have been a lot more tension and friction than there actually was. So, without saying too much, you know, I'm very wary of spoilers when it comes to the MCU. Although I don't really know how people feel on it now, so I think that's going to be really interesting. There is a mid-credit and end-credit scene. Mid-credit, I'm not really going to talk about. The end-credit one is the one I want to talk about in spoilers. But yeah, overall, I can't really talk about anything else about spoiling it. Because, again, I only watched one trailer. I don't know what else was revealed. I don't know if the so-called villain was actually revealed in the trailer. So, if they were, then I apologise. But, yeah, I feel like I can properly get into things by talking about spoilers. So, yeah, overall, Marvel's Thunderbolts, I really enjoyed, and it really felt like a nice return to the fun, sort of fun but emotional at times Marvel film. And I thought the cast worked really well together. They were fantastic. They all had a reason for doing what they were doing. And in the end, they all had their reasons for sticking together, which I really, really liked as well. So, yeah, I don't really have anything else to say on this side of things. So let's get into just a few spoilers. Okay, so another character that's introduced is Robert Reynolds, pretty much since the beginning. So the entire reason that they all meet up is they've all been given this assignment, a mission, by a woman called Valentina Dufontaine, I think is her name. They make a reference about that, about the pronunciation. But she sets them up on a mission, finds out actually you were all sent out on different missions to kill each other, so she can rub her hands of some super serum experimentation, essentially. She is sort of being followed by Congress, and she wants to get rid of the evidence. They are part of that evidence. That's how they meet. And then Robert comes into the picture. So Robert is one of the human test subjects, and he is a successful one. The problem is that it's stated throughout the film, it's kind of shoved down your throat a little bit, I thought, that he is a bit mentally unstable, he has some mental health issues, it says he has depression, and I think he was a really interesting character. I did find it a bit annoying that it was a bit ham-fisted, and constantly, you were kind of constantly punched in the face of, oh, he's got like these problems and this mental health issue and blah blah blah. But I think what was interesting about this is that essentially his mental health is his own enemy, and that is the villain in this story. I don't know if the trailer showed this. I know it showed like the black silhouette with like the white bright eyes. And that is Robert. That is his darkness. That is his, health issues. That is his depression personified. And I thought that was really interesting because it does go into, they don't just use that as a gimmick. There is a reason for it throughout the film from the start. Like, you meet him at the beginning and he's very like insecure. He's not confident. He's very sort of down on himself, and you kind of think, okay, there's something up here, there's something going on, as well as there's something going on in terms of his powers. So I thought that was really interesting. And then it goes further near the end where Yelena, again, I said this is more her story than anything else. She continuously supports him and is kind of a mentor and a friend to him throughout. Like, she doesn't want to fight him at, you know, when it comes to the time. She doesn't want to go against him. She wants to help him. And that theme continues throughout the whole film. She never goes against that unless she really, really has to, which even then she doesn't want to, because she always thinks, well, there's another way round. And I really, really liked that. It showed that even though he was literally fighting his own demons, like, she was always there to help and convince the others to help him as well. And that's what I meant by this is quite emotional, which I didn't expect. You know, the emotional side, it's going back to those emotional beats that the previous Marvel films had when they first started out. And I think it works really, really well. But I think it also shows that not everyone can have the super serum, or that type of serum anyway. We were talking about with Brave New World that Sam didn't want to take the serum because he didn't know how he was going to respond to it. He also didn't feel he needed it. So this sort of further elevates that kind of discussion of like, okay, should we really be giving this to everyone? I don't think that's a good idea. So I thought that was also an interesting point to bring up as well. And even, you know, the person who makes Robert who he is, which is Valentina, she wants to make him into, you know, the new Avenger. You can have all the combined powers of the Avengers into this Superman-looking superhero called the Sentry. He had this bright gold, like, kind of tacky uniform, like, costume. You know, it was a very Superman-esque, you know, 1950s, 1960s style kind of thing. I got what they were going for. You know, return to the good old days and all that lot. But it doesn't really work out very well. So, yeah, even she, like, pretends to be a mentor and she's not really. She's just kind of using him in the end, which obviously he quickly doesn't like. I feel like the ending was a bit forced because she sees the fight that's going on with the Thunderbolts and with the Sanctuary, aka Robert, and the end scene is her being like, oh, this could be, you know, these are the new Avengers, you know, everyone give it up for the new Avengers, it was my idea, kind of thing. And I feel like that was a bit forced. But the other problem that I have with that last scene is, obviously we were talking about with Brave New World, Harrison Ford's character, tore down the Avengers, just wanting to bring them back anyway. So I feel like it kind of goes back to Marvel than the problem I had with Marvel from the previous review that we did, where I said it feels like Marvel are kind of grasping at straws now. However, the end credit is the important one. So mid-credit is not really anything. It's David Harbour in a supermarket trying to get someone to buy an Avengers merchandise, and that's kind of it. And yeah, but the end credits is the group are in the old Avengers Tower, which was now Valentina's building, and they get a signal about an interdimensional shift and something coming through, something coming towards Earth fast from somewhere else. And we get an image of a spaceship. It's the Fantastic Four. We had the Fantastic Four logo on this spaceship. They zoom in on it and we see the logo. So that's what it is. That's what this is building up to next. I think what's interesting is that that's how they're going to explain how Fantastic Four comes into that universe from their own universe. We're going back to multiverse stuff. But I think there are easy explanations for it. You can do stuff like that and be like, oh yeah, it's just, you know, a rip in time or a rip in dimensions and that's it. That's how they've managed it. And I think with Fantastic Four, you can kind of get away with that. I can't remember if that's the next Marvel film, but that is what the end credits scene is building to and is teasing. I'm excited. I think Fantastic Four looks great. I'm actually quite excited for it. I wasn't expecting to be excited for it because this is the 4th or 5th film by this point. So I wasn't really, that hyped up for it. But it looks great. But yeah, that is the end credits. That's the important one. Plus the scene also addresses why Sam isn't in the new Avengers. So Sam is in Falcon, now Captain America. They do question, okay, well, why isn't Sam here? Why, Bucky, did you talk to him? Did you try and get him interested in joining the Avengers? And he just said, yeah, he wasn't interested. He didn't want all that. Which, from what I remember, I think that was the scene in Brave New World where Bucky made a little cameo. So it all kind of interconnects, and it does make sense for Sam's character that he doesn't want to be involved, actually. So I was kind of okay with that. It made sense. It was a very throwaway moment, but it addresses why Captain America's not going to be in the new Avengers. So I'm okay with that. If you can explain it away in terms of whether it reflects well on that particular character, then I'm okay with that. But this was my review on Marvel's Thunderbolts. I was Megan. This is Battle Royale with Cheese. See you soon.